My name is Greg McDaniel. Welcome back to another amazing show of Real Estate Coach Uncensored.
And I'm Bernice Ross, and I'm very excited to welcome my very dear friend Connie Myers to our show today. She is probably the leading expert in real estate on disaster preparedness. She's worked for FEMA. She's put together a new certification program that can help realtors get their communities prepared. And our title for the session today is When the Unthinkable Happens, Be Prepared, Be Ready. So Connie, welcome to the show. I want to start with, you have some amazing statistics about just how bad it's been. Could you give us some perspective in terms of what was unusual about 2020 as well as what we're seeing here in 2021?
Well, I mean, obviously 2020 was a pretty outrageous year when it comes to disasters, both man-made as well as natural disasters. We all are stuck on our sofas or in our houses being quarantined. And at the same time, we had 2020, the natural disaster. It was, we had there was actually 6 weeks in the months of July and August where there were six different types of disasters that either never happened before or were extremely rare. We had 2 hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time. That hadn't happened since 1959. We had 30 named storms, and that had never happened before. We had in the Midwest, upper Midwest, we had what are called derecho winds, which are sideways winds that did major damage and destroyed a lot of property in the Midwest, upper Midwest, like Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, that area. Then we had, even though it wasn't a hurricane force winds in Florida that spawned over 50 tornadoes all at the same time. And then in California, we had what we call fire nados. So they're like a tornado, but they're made of fire. And then look at the fall, and the entire Western United States was on fire. In the Northwest, in Oregon, there were 3 towns wiped out. So, I mean, it's just what's happened in 2020, in addition to the pandemic, was really created a record-breaking year. And unfortunately, I forgot one more. So in the Gulf of Maine, got the dubious honor of having the most rise in temperature of the body of water than any other body of water on the planet. I don't know about you, but I like lobsters, and
not good for the lobsters.
A tough time.
And I want to go back to the California statistics. In California, according to the Washington Post, the record before 2020 took place in 2018 in terms of number of acres burned, and it was 2 million. In 2020, it was 4 million. It doubled. And what we're looking at going into 2021, we've got a huge drought, very incredibly low amounts of rain. I know LA is way under, the entire state's way under. So we may be looking at a historic fire season again on the West Coast because of that. Now, Connie, I want to start off by, you have a story, someone you and I know well, who's a broker, and if you could share that, what happened with her, because this is kind of encapsulates what happens when you have to evacuate in 15 minutes or less.
So our friend she was born and raised in Malibu, California, and her mom was still living in the family home when the fires came through. She had an office. I think she had 30 to 40 agents, something like that, in her office. And then her and her husband and her 2 little girls lived a couple miles away from her family home. Well, they thought they were far enough away that the direction of the fire was going a different way, so they weren't too concerned. Well, her family home burnt to the ground. Many of her agents either had damaged or destroyed homes. And she got a knock on the door at the middle of the night. They had 15 minutes to get out. Whoa. And she said she spent the first half of that time spinning around in a circle, trying to figure out what to take. And when they got to the shelter, they realized they had brought nothing for her little girls were like 4 and 6 at the time, and they had brought nothing. And that is what happens when we get into that situation. Our mind goes blank. Our mind goes completely blank. So we don't know what we need to do, which is why it's so critically important to be prepared.
Yeah, Connie, actually something that happened to me personally here in my condo. I'm on a 4-story condo. and about a couple of months ago, my girlfriend and I were dead asleep, and all of a sudden the fire alarm went off, and it never goes off in the middle of the night. And she and I had role played multiple times on kind of what to do. And so we knew, we said, grab the cat, put it in the backpack, grab the cash, put it with the cat. She'll grab her stuff. We had go bags ready to go. And we exited very, very quickly. And even with a plan set up, it was very scary.
Oh, I have a great story about that. So I did a panel for the California Association of Realtors for their Professional Development Education Committee. And I had 4 individuals on there. And one of them was the LA County head of the CERT program, the Community Emergency Response Team program. And it was a fire chief. I think he said he was like a fire chief, or he's been as a fireman for like 28 years, something like that, a long time. Mm-hmm. Anyway, when the fires were hitting the San Fernando Valley, he realized, he was in his neighborhood, and he realized that the fires were heading his direction. Now, here's a man that's highly trained and knows exactly how to go into reaction mode, right? And he said he had a hard time because it was personally his home now that was at risk. And he had a hard time maintaining what he had learned to be able to react. So I think it's really important to point out the fact that another example of that is my partner. They just had a little bit of a shake in California, and it wasn't anything serious. But she said before, when there would be a shake, she'd stand up and run around and try to figure out what she needed to do. Instead, this time, a little shake, and she stood up. Her shoes were right there. She stood up, she grabbed her shoes, and she got to her bag before she even realized she was reacting. And that's the benefit. That's the benefit of being resilient when it comes to preparedness.
So Connie, can you talk about how we can be prepared?
First of all, I highly, highly recommend, for many reasons, not just for disasters or crisis, I highly recommend you go around the house with a video camera, open up all the drawers, all the doors, and take videos of everything inside, and then do the same outside. That way you know what you have, because when something happens, you're not going to remember what you owned. And so then when something does happen, then you can go around and either take a video or pictures of the things that were damaged or destroyed, and you can compare the two. That's number one. But also number two, people don't so there is a statistic that says that people are prepared either 15% financially, 35% have an emergency kit. Financially is pretty low. You need to have cash to be able to operate, right? Because if you don't have cash and you can't use your credit card, how are you going to buy things? How are you going to get lodging, that sort of thing? So the number one thing to have with your emergency kit is cash. But also, you need to have more than one kit. When they say 35% have an emergency kit, they may have one kit in their house and one kit in their car. That's about it. Very few people know they need to have 4 kits. You need to have a large kit that has everything in it that you want to take, all of the water and the food and the clothing and the household items and all of that. You might need 2 big duffel bags for that. And then you need to have a go kit where you can just grab it and go. If you're being rescued, or if, say it's an earthquake and the earthquake is over and you want to get out, you don't have time to haul around 2 big duffel bags. So you take a kit that's got just the necessities in it, and then you take that.
What should be in that kit, Connie?
Things like toothbrush, a whistle is important in case you get trapped somewhere. Some food and water, just, enough to get you through. Some basic first aid kit stuff. Your documents, all your documents, they should be digitized, but you should have hard copies with you.
So like a thumb drive or something.
Yes, a thumb drive or something like that. If you're being rescued, it doesn't matter, but otherwise you might need local maps, or you might need to have the emergency planning stuff. You need to know if you're going to be evacuating, where you're going to evacuate to, all those kinds of things. And if you have a family, so the third kit you need to have is for your car. And that has to, depending upon where you live, like, so if you're living in upstate Michigan, it's going to be different than if you're living in Southern California. So you need to look at that car and say, okay, what happens if you get stranded from an earthquake and you can't go anywhere? So you look at that and you figure out, okay, what do I need to have? And then the fourth kit is if you're working outside of your home, you need to have a kit for your office, because are we always going to be at home when there's a disaster? No. And then if you have, so that's the 4 basic kits. Then there's 3 additional ones. There's if you have children, you need to have a kit for your children. You need to have a kit if you have seniors living with you. All of these people have special needs. If you have special needs people, people that are disabled or have challenges, you need to have a kit for them, especially for them. So now we're up to 7 kits if you have everything. So, and people just don't understand. And then when I was training, I did an actual training at CAR at their expo, and there was about 30 people in the room, 30 or 40 people in the room. And I went around and I asked everybody how many had an emergency kit, and about 10 people raised their hand. So then I went around and I asked each person, well, okay, well, what's in your kit? Well, most of them said, well, I need to replenish it because we needed the pliers that were in there. We needed the tape that was in there or whatever. So they went and they borrowed from the emergency kit, right? So you need to make sure you keep it up to date. There was one person that had a fully operational, ready to go emergency kit in his car and in his house. And one other thing I want to point out, I worked with FEMA for 7 years as a FEMA inspector and trainer. And one of my very first inspections or disasters that I did was in Central California. There had been a big flood. The water had gotten up like 6-7 feet. It was deep. Drove up to one of my inspections, and there was this elderly man. He was probably in his mid 80s, sitting on the stoops, and he was crying. And he was holding what looked like a bunch of wood, just a little old pile of wood. And I got out of my car, introduced myself, and said, how can I help you? And he says, this was my grandfather's toolbox. So if you have something of great value, you need to put that with your emergency kit. And one of the biggest things is pictures. I can't tell you how many people I did inspections for that cried because they lost their pictures. And hopefully, if you haven't digitized your pictures yet, this is a good reminder to do so. But also, if you haven't done it and you need your pictures, you put them in your emergency kit and take them with you. But I hope that you would take the time to digitize them. That way you don't have to worry about it. But it's really, you have to think about heirlooms or things that are of great value. If they're too big to take with you, have a plan of what you're going to do with it, just in case.
So Connie, you're talking about these lists, and I wasn't thinking about pliers, but you've put together a list of what should go in each type of kit. So we'll be able to share that link with our readers and with our viewers today.
Absolutely.
But what else do they need to know, Connie?
Well, they need to have plans, and not just one plan. They need to ask themselves, okay, if I am at work and my children are at school, what is the parent plan? What is the kid plan? What is the evacuation plan? Most importantly, what is the communication plan? Who's going to be talking to who? And then any kind of special needs that you have. And then if you have a business, you want to think about, okay, what do I need for my business as an emergency plan? What does that look like? And again, a business communication plan. I talk about having a crisis management team and a crisis management center and what all that needs to be equipped with. So you really need to look at your situation, both personally as well as if you have a business of your own. And what does that look like? What kind of plans do you need to make sure that you are completely prepared? And then what you want to do is you want to put a list together. You want to include the list of your emergency kits. You want to put a list of your plans. You want to put a list of, if you have heirlooms or something that you want to keep, put those all on your list. That way you can glance at it and you've got it and you just check everything off.
As a real estate agent professional, and I'm advising my family and my clients, what would be the essentials to put in there, and how do you broach that question, and how could you bring that as a value add in a listing presentation or just a conversation?
Well, I really believe that the real estate agent is at a very unique position to be able to help their clients and to help their community in giving back. Real estate agents are all about giving back, and this is a very valuable way of doing it. So once be a good example. Be a good example and have your kits all put together, have your plans all put together. And if you're sitting there and you're talking, and the first thing you need to know before you can even do all of that is you have to know your risk. What kind of risk factors do you have in the area that you live in? Because your emergency kits are going to change depending on what that is. So maybe talking with a potential client or a client about, okay, these are the risks that are in this area, this is what I have in my preparedness kits and plans. This is something that I would love to see that you do for yourself and your family. That would be one way that I would approach it. And really,
Connie,
when
let
you're
me interrupt here for a second, because one of the ways that you can see the risk for your locations, very specific, is a site called homedisclosure.com.
Just gonna
And
say
it
that.
outlines in great detail, everything from risk from UV, radon, but also from natural disasters, tornadoes, hail, floods. And it's free. It's through Atom Data. And, they have, they've been in the business for years, and they've got great records. So again, great resource. That's homedisclosure.com. And that would be something that I think you could bring to a listing appointment, or to just, when you meet someone, share that information with them, and just say, if you'd like to have a conversation about how to be prepared for some of the risks that are, involved in living in this area.
You know what, guys, here's an idea that just popped into my brain really, really quickly. And I think it could be an awesome opportunity to stand out from the other real estate agents. What about bringing a preparedness bag specifically designed for their geographic location, and bring it on the listing presentation and give it to them as a gift to protect their family? Connie, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, Greg, I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that anytime you're able to show and provide that kind of valuable information,
Hmm.
first of all, what happens is you actually change when you get prepared like this and you have those kits. And if, as a child, you probably didn't realize it, but your parents were being very resilient in the way that they were providing you with all those materials. And as a kid, you probably didn't recognize it. But the bottom line is, when you can provide anything of information to another family or to another human being, then you are a better human being, and you are changing their mindset at the same time you're changing your own mindset.
Now, Greg, you're kind of master of how to market and take advantage of this kind of thing. This is like, you just push the button here. So I imagine you've got some ideas, but Connie, let's start with you before we turn Greg loose.
I do.
Any way that we can use these other, we've talked about the kits at closing gifts or on a listing appointment. What else could be done?
Well, if they are out there looking for clients, just getting out there and talking about it, bringing awareness to your community, because those statistics I gave you are real.
You know what, Bernice, I got a lot of ideas when it comes to the bags. One of the things to personalize it would be to go down to a local embroiderer's business and have it embroidered with the name of the mother, father, or just the entire family, whoever's going to be in the household, and kind of personalize it for those individuals. And then, in these bags, I would, personalize it for the ages of them. For me, I live in a community where there's 3 different pools and a lake. And so, I mean, there could be water filtration kits. It could be, food. It could be, whistles like Connie was talking about, but also just contact information for local businesses, the fire department, the police department, maybe a reflective vest, a lot of these different ideas, so everybody kind of stay together. I'd also recommend, and this is my opinion, this is what my parents did for me, put in a radio, like a hand battery radio, that everyone knows what channel to talk on, so you can communicate in case, our cell phones go out. There's so much other stuff. I mean, I'm buying myself a lot of preparedness stuff right now, and I'm putting it into a bag. That's actually no joke. And it's some things I never even thought I would ever even want to buy, but I'm buying them because life is crazy. You don't know which way it's going to go, and it's better to have it and not need it, and versus need it and not have it, right?
Yeah, I want to circle back right now to this notion of what else you can do. And Connie, you were talking about your initiative called Kits for Kids. And one of the best things that you can do as a realtor, something we've talked about on a number of shows here, is to help your community get prepared. And Connie, what have you seen, realtors do to help that?
Well, what's really interesting is that when we started communicating with like some of the schools, and when my advisors go out there and start really going into the neighborhoods and stuff, people are grateful. Part of the problem is when it comes to preparedness, it's kind of like the reluctance to write a will, because we have to think about dying. And when it comes to preparedness, we have to think that something might happen. And by the way, 61% of us believe that we are going to be affected by a disaster in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's a pretty good number. And if you have a business, FEMA says that if you have a 75% chance of being out of business in 2 years if you are affected by a disaster. So there's very strong reasons why we should be prepared, but we're reluctant because then we have to think about it. And we have to think about, okay, well, what potential problem can I have? So when people bring it up to be aware, it's very interesting. They actually are grateful for you bring it to their now, whether or not they do anything about it, that's another story.
Grace,
So
you had some ideas when we were prepping for the show today about how to raise money for this kind of initiative. What were some of the things that came to mind for you on this?
there's a lot. I love the whole and Connie, you really nailed it on the head on this one, and it really kind of made me think here a second ago about being aware and being cognitive of the opportunity or possibility, excuse me, of something going awry, because we're kind of like goldfish. We only look forward and we forget everything behind us, and we don't everything about what's going to happen in the future. And I think that the most important thing here is to be aware of it. And so to be aware of it, then you have to be, and once you are aware of what could take place, funding for this is a massive opportunity for branding. And I think there could be GoFundMe pages. You could talk to local schools. There's a lot of sports that may or may not be, depending where you are in the country, that funding for those local school, elementary, junior high, and high school, sports teams. Maybe take some of that cash, raise some money from local businesses, maybe some entrepreneurs, something along those lines. Put together packages for the families with the different ages and genders and everything else. Really kind of get people rocking and rolling and bring the community. It can be scattered and kind of dismembered, but bring them together with one goal, and that's protecting each other, protecting your environment, protecting your community, and really being one.
One of the other things you didn't mention was one of them had a neighborhood garage sale. So there's so many ways to be able to support your community and become totally visible at the same time.
A lot of us real estate agents, we volunteer to allow homeowners to borrow our open house A-frames that we use on Sundays. But then what they do is they take cardboard or any kind of paper and they put like garage sale at 123 Main Street, follow the signs, right? What if you're able to allow folks to borrow your signs, but then negotiate with them, say, hey, look, would you like to help out your community and give back maybe 5, 10, 15, 20, 25% or whatever it's going to be of your net sales to building, the bags for the local families, and just kind of help the folks around them.
Let me pyramid on that, because what I really like about that idea, say, I will match whatever you want to donate.
Oh, now we're talking.
That's a win-win.
Yeah, now we're talking. So Connie, what is your final and what's your thought on this article?
Well, I have to say, I think the most important message is that you can give back, you can make a difference, you can help people be prepared, and you can help your business all at the same time. There's so many different ways that you can help your community and help your clients and help the people. The ideas are endless.
Connie, great show today. Thank you for being with us. Again, you can reach her at connie.myers@ckmsolutions.com. Thank you for being with us today. See you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.